More than 3,500 people have been killed after two major earthquakes hit southern Turkey and northern Syria today, flattening thousands of buildings and leaving tens of thousands injured. A massive rescue operation is underway tonight to try to find any survivors. People have spent the day digging with their bare hands. It's feared thousands could be trapped beneath the rubble. The first quake, measuring 7.8, struck when people were asleep in the early hours of this morning. The epicenter was near the Turkish city of Gaziantep. It triggered a second tremor, almost as powerful, just a few hours later. The United Nations has called for an international response to the earthquakes. World leaders have pledged to send aid, but freezing temperatures are already hampering the aid effort. Our Middle East correspondent Anna Foster arrived in Turkey this morning and has spent the day travelling towards the epicenter close to the border with Syria. She's broadcasting using just her mobile phone, and she joins us now from the town of Osmaniye, 80 miles from the epicenter. Anna.
The closer you get to the epicenter of this quake, the more you can see the damage. And in this city, it is completely dark, apart from this rescue that you see going on behind me. Now, this was a hotel. I was talking to the owner and he told me that 14 people were asleep in there last night when the quake happened. 7 have already been recovered, 7 bodies, and they are hoping that they can find some survivors in that rubble. But wherever you look in this city, you can see where shop fronts have collapsed. There is broken glass. And of course, there is darkness, complete darkness everywhere, apart from the light of a mobile phone that you can see me by. And this is the scene that has been replicated across southern Turkey.
Running for their lives, shaken to their foundations, whole buildings fell. And across southern Turkey, peace became panic. People helped where they could. This was a series of powerful earthquakes, not just one. They were only around 20 kilometers under the surface, and shallow quakes caused the most damage. In towns and cities across a huge area, the rescue efforts began. With diggers and sniffer dogs, teams of people began to dig frantically in search of survivors. For decades, Turkey has been bracing itself for a huge quake. Tonight, everyone is a rescuer, and they all want to find a survivor.
Çocuk çıktı, çocuk çıktı.
It's a painful wait for news.
There are people still trapped under rubble. I have a friend living in this apartment. His children were rescued from the top floor, but only his daughter broke an arm. We'll see what happened to those living on the ground floors. May God give us a speedy recovery.
I was sleeping when my wife suddenly woke me up. The quake was very severe, very scary. It took almost 2 minutes until the shaking stopped.
Outside Turkey, the world stands ready to help. Offers to send specialist equipment and teams of experts have been coming in all day.
We have received several offers of international aid for our country. Offers of assistance from 45 countries, including NATO and the European Union, have reached us.
In the city of Adana, help arrived quickly. Alongside the emergency services, young men fit enough to move the rubble stepped in.
You can really see the size of the effort that's going on here on top of this pile of rubble. Rescuers are using their bare hands, and you can see them throwing down blocks and trying to search desperately for survivors. This used to be a 12-story apartment building, just like the one behind it, and so far they've only found 3 survivors.
For families with missing relatives, the wait for news is agony.
We all heard the sound of the earthquake. She has her sister down there, under the rubble.
It's 8 people under there. 3 of them are children. My uncle and his wife and their son and their daughter and 3 children.
There are my sister and her 3 children under the building. Also her husband, her mother and father-in-law are there too.
Turkey has dealt with natural disasters before. Few are on this scale. As night falls, cities like Osmaniye are without power, in darkness. The few lights there are have been sent to searches that offer the best chance of hope. It's still too early to know the real extent of the destruction here. Finding those who are trapped beneath collapsed buildings will take days, if not weeks. The death toll is already many hundreds. The numbers of injured stands in the thousands. It's bitterly cold and the rain keeps falling. The aftermath of this quake is testing rescuers to their limits. Anna Foster, BBC News, Osmania.
Across the border in northern Syria, at least 1,400 people have been killed and thousands more injured in what is one of the poorest regions of the world. It's been cut off from the international community after years of conflict between President Assad's forces and rebel fighters, making rescue efforts even harder. Our chief international correspondent, Lyse Doucet, who has reported extensively from Syria, has this report.
A Syrian village which vanished in minutes. Besnaya. Its people are all that's left standing, those who survived. So many didn't. All along this area next to Turkey.
Still now, many families now are under the rubble. Our team's trying to save them. It's a very difficult task for us. We need help. We need the international community to do something.
Families shaken from their sleep just after 4 a.m. by a powerful earthquake whose epicenter is just across the border. In the dead of night, rescue workers known as White Helmets race to help, pulling this young girl from the rubble. This is work they know well. Idlib, the last rebel-held enclave, has lived for years with ferocious bombardment by warplanes of the Syrian military or its Russian ally. The few hospitals which still operate here have hardly any resources or staff. Now they're overwhelmed.
We received hundreds of casualties. Really, we need urgent help for the area, especially when we are talking about medical help.
These patients were already living on the edge in a war zone, displaced time and again for more than a decade. Now they've been knocked down again.
We were sleeping peacefully. At 4 a.m., we felt a huge earthquake. I woke up my wife and my children and we ran towards the exit door. We opened it and suddenly all the building collapsed.
Nature doesn't take sides. Areas like Hama, under Syrian government control, were also hit. They're also worn down by war. Here it's the Syrian Arab Red Crescent, working with bare hands and also with diggers.
Everyone will carry on their duties as needed. We ask for mercy for the victims and speedy recovery for the injured. It is our fate.
Syria's plight has been thrust into the eyes of the world again. Today, it's fighting a different kind of battle.
The international community has failed Syria for many years. This is an opportunity to try and put that right. This is a moment, I think, to put principles over politics, to really look at ways that they can show solidarity with those who are on the ground, and make sure that Syrians, who've been going through over a decade of crisis now, do get the support they so desperately need.
Long-suffering Syrians have felt forgotten by the world. Reaching people across this broken country will be hard. But this disaster may make the world care again. Lyse Doucet, BBC News.